You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technique, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terror. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Since September 11th, 2001, we've lost over 150,000 veterans to suicide. That's not just a statistic. That's 150,000 brothers and sisters who carried the weight of service only to face their darkest battles alone on home soil. What's even more troubling is the approach we've taken to address this crisis. We're looking at a system that often responds to mental health struggles by prescribing medications that, of all things, can increase the very thoughts we're trying to combat. Think about that for a moment. We're giving our veterans who may already be wrestling with suicidal thoughts medications that list suicidal ideation as a potential side effect. This isn't just counterintuitive. In many cases, it's outright dangerous. The Department of Veterans Affairs just released their 2024 suicide report. And behind the carefully crafted statistics and methodically chosen metrics, these harsh realities remain. Today, we'll hear from veterans working directly in this space who witness these challenges firsthand and are actively seeking solutions. We'll also hear the positions from veteran service organizations who are leading the conversations around this dialogue, and we'll conclude with insights from Congressman Mike Boss, Chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, whose oversight role provides a crucial window into the policy shaping veteran mental health care in the United States. The message could not be clearer. What we are doing is not working. The status quo isn't just failing, it is costing lives. The numbers in this report, however they're presented, represent real people, real families, and real loss. It's time to have the courage to try something different, to be truly honest with ourselves about the care we're providing to our nation's veterans, to explore alternative approaches that treat our veterans as whole human beings, not just collections of symptoms to be medicated.
Where lies the truth? Ending veteran suicide. Welcome back to Transition Tuesday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, X Spaces Simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, and Roku. And I've probably forgotten one. Well, you just saw that right there. That's the opening from today's guest's podcast. You can find it on YouTube at the Grunt Style Foundation. And it's titled Gaslighting America's Veterans, I believe. And all the clips today are from that show that I normally show a clip at the beginning of each segment. And the Department of Veterans Affairs released that 2024 report. I got a copy printed out of the findings, the second volume of it, that's a half an inch thick. They let it out a few weeks ago. And while there is a lot of information in the report, there really is. The bottom line is we are not adequately addressing this issue. In a press release, the Grunt Style Foundation is publicly calling for an immediate investigation into the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs suicide prevention program spending and its effectiveness. And they're absolutely right. Let me just quote them. Quote, "The numbers don't lie, and neither will I. We're losing the battle while drowning in bureaucracy," said the president of the Grunt Style Foundation. Another quote, "Every day we lose 17 of our brothers and sisters to suicide." And that's not just a statistic. Those are our friends, our battle buddies, our family members. The VA's current budget allocates approximately $570 million just for suicide prevention initiatives. And yet the crisis continues to worsen. He further states, This is part of a larger $13 billion mental health budget that isn't delivering the results that our veterans and their families desperately need, close quote. Well, my guest today said those words. He's a co-owner of Grunt Style, a Marine combat veteran and entrepreneur, Tim Jensen. Tim started in 2013 with the company folding T-shirts for just over minimum wage. And today, he develops the brand as the chief brand officer of Grunt Style itself, but he also is the president of the board of directors of Grunt Style Foundation, which is their 501c3, focused on empowering veterans to create a better life for themselves and contribute to the community in which they live, not kill themselves. We're against that. And that's why I wanted him to come on the show this week. He's done a couple of other shows, did a big space last week with Shell and Chad Caton, who's a friend of our show and everything. But this is critically important that we continue to talk about this issue, and not just that, but get action on it. Tim Jensen, it's good to see you again, man. Welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Colonel, it's great to see you again. And, for those that are keeping track, the Colonel and I, many years ago, we took a ride once around D.C. and liberated every one of the national monuments during sequestration and took all of those barriers and threw them into the White House lawn. And I'm very proud of that. That was one of the very first things I did for Grunt Style. And here we are many years later, fighting another fight. And, this one is just as big, just as impactful, and has the ability of impacting just as many lives.
That's right, man. I'll never forget that October, the Million Veterans March. It was kind of a foggy morning and cold, and you guys roll up in that car in front of the subway, which the opposite of the guy that ran my political campaign that year, a U.S. Senate race, was above the subway there, just upside of Capitol Hill there, and I opened the trunk, and there's my T-shirts. The first Grunt Style T-shirts I've ever bought was a mass order for the U.S. Senate race that Rob Maness ran, and I met all you guys that day, and then we went and did the march, and the rest is history, man. And it is history. I mean, that was in 2013. My gosh. Yeah. I'm getting a lot older. You're not aging at all. I noticed that when I saw you guys in person a while back. But, man, I'm so glad you're doing this because you're taking this brand and this little company that was started by you guys, by veterans, is run by veterans, and you're making inroads into this, and I just am so pleased and blessed to have you on the show to talk about this report and talk about. I don't know if you heard my intro, but I use a clip at the beginning of every segment. All the clips come from your Gaslighting America's Veterans show that you did for I think 2 hours and 40 minutes or so with those great guests. So we don't have to talk about what's in the clips. We can talk about whatever you want. But this report, man, I can see why you're calling for an investigation. And I told the crowd before that was listening on Spaces before the show started that go get a beer or whatever your favorite beverage is, sit down in a quiet room with the door closed and watch this show, Gaslighting America's Veterans, that Grunt Style Foundation put out, because it's going to make you angry, but it's also going to open your eyes.
It's absolutely incredible. We've been looking at this for some time. The foundation is only 3 years old. However, from the work that Grunt Style has been doing, well over 15 years now, suicide has been in the front seat of our work for the very beginning. Like it was some of the very big first issues that we were working on, and here we are today. That the problem is still as dire as it was then, if not worse. We're far more people dying on an annual basis. Far more money is being spent on this than it was back then in 2013, and the outcomes are no different. And I have to ask myself the question, like, what the hell is going on, right? If we look back at, the line was struck in 2001. That's when the VA started saying that they're measuring veteran suicides, And from 2001 to 2020, we didn't hear anything, right? We just heard 22 a day, push-ups, awareness, awareness, awareness. And then they started, developing these suicide reports, and a picture started to be painted. Well, here we are, 2025, the VA, is 2 years, these reports generally lag 2 years, so we're not getting real-time information. And, the information that we are getting is just, it's dire. It's obfuscated in a bunch of layered language that, the average veteran would never be able to get through. I, honestly don't even read it any longer. Now with the advent of ChatGPT, I just ran this thing through ChatGPT and said, give me the summary. And it pooped out everything I needed to know. That, they're still not talking about antidepressants and psychotropics inside of the report. They're not talking about any of the meaningful data that they have at their fingertips that they just won't release to us, like how many people are, how long have patients within the system been on psychotropics, right? How many of them are committing suicide while on these medicines? They don't want to release that information. So we had to go out and start mining the information ourselves. And the first thing that I did was I hired a professional, and it was by the name of an individual by the name of Derek Bloomkey. He's been working on this issue for well over a decade. Has all of the data that the VA is hiding, and we started learning a lot of weird and frankly terrifying statistics. Here's one for you: 68% of all of the individuals that are currently in the VHA care, meaning they're enrolled in the healthcare program, 68% of them are on psychotropics. That's about,
wow.
That's a big number. A big number, right?
Yeah.
And of that, then you got another 25% of those individuals that are on antidepressants. So, what is the strategy that we are developing and deploying within the biggest medical system in the United States, if not the planet, that is treating more than half of the cohort with poison or pills that are psychotropic in nature, that affect the mind, to balance the chemicals of the brain, and often increase suicidal ideations when you're participating in using these medicines. But we believe, or the VA and its strategies of deployment of these medicines, feels that it is the best foot forward in combating these issues of TBI, anxiety, PTSD, all these different things by the cocktail of medicine I use loosely, that they prescribe. This is no different than what we saw years ago with the opioid epidemic. In fact, the numbers were almost very similar. It was something to the tune of 68 to 70% of those inside the VHA were addicted to opioids, and they drove that number down to damn near zero. But they don't want to touch anything when it comes to the mental health of these individuals. And they just want to continue prescribing, medicines that, if you had a choice as a civilian, right, you could take the generic version, or you could take the preferred white label version, or the preferred version, right? Well, here's what the VA is doing, right? And I'll use trazodone as an example, right? They would rather deploy trazodone into the cohort rather than Ambien, its counterpart. With trazodone, you get a 61% higher rate of suicidal ideation in comparison to its counterpart, Ambien. Why do we not choose Ambien? Well, it's a bit more expensive, and we believe that the veteran isn't worth it. Like, what are we talking about? This is ridiculous.
That's one of the problems with government health care. Look, I'm a VA patient. That's where I started a couple of years ago when I moved close to a VA facility under my primary care there. And that's one of the problems. Say that again. What's the name of that drug again? It's the generic of Ambien?
Yeah, trazodone, the generic of Ambien. Widely prescribed within the VA, a 61% higher chance of suicidal ideation than its counterpart. But hey, let's keep issuing that out. And you know what? Let's do even one better. Let's pair it with another crazy psychoactive compound called Paxil or Zoloft, and then increase those percentage points. Like 10, 20 points.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we got to take a commercial break, Tim. When we come back, we'll see another clip and everything. I think this one's from Nick Pomascano of Ranger Up, and we could discuss that. But I want to keep talking about these drugs and get some more of the names out, because I think every single one of them have at least some risk of increasing suicidal ideation. And it's linked to a number I think I saw, or a group of numbers I think I saw in this report, but I'm not sure. We'll be right back with Tim Jensen, the president of Grunt Style Foundation. We're talking veteran suicide and ending it. What really needs to be done. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Not deployed have even higher suicide rates than veterans that have deployed, right? So we have to look at it differently. It's, the people tend to think, oh, somebody experienced some terrible thing in combat and they can't get over it. And while there are cases like that, it's very infrequent. Typically what happens, you get out of the military, you lose purpose. You no longer have a tribe around you. Maybe you're on pain meds for some injury. Maybe you're on psychotropic drugs for depression as a result of not having purpose and tribe when you get out. Maybe you're going through a divorce. Maybe you're drinking too much, because let's face it, we all know that that's something that happened. Most of us have suffered from drinking too much as a result of being in the military. And you stack that on top of all of these other problems, and it creates this kind of like maelstrom of, there's no way out. I can't see a path forward. And any of those factors by themselves are enough. But, there are people that don't have jobs, just went through a divorce, they're on pain meds or they're on psychotropic drugs, and they're like, what's the point? It's also, there's a little bit of it like the scene from First Blood, where you're like, in the military, I had all this responsibility. Even if you got out as a team leader or a squad leader, like, it's like you were in charge of a lot of people in a very important setting. And now it's like you can't get a job in something you look at and you go, man, I could easily do that. Now, this isn't most people. Veterans significantly outperform all cohorts in compensation, in entrepreneurship, and levels of happiness. But the small group of people that kind of don't, click right away end up in this.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's another Tuesday, and we're actually talking about the transition because we have a new Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Air Force and Navy veteran, Colonel Chaplain Doug Collins is now in charge of the organization of the Trump administration. And I know him. He's got a good heart. My guest today is Tim Jensen, who has called for an investigation by the VA of their suicide prevention programs and all the funding. Where's it going? $13 billion, folks. $13 billion, $500,000 just for outreach and everything. And Tim, welcome back. You know, Nick was talking about the root causes of these conditions. He wasn't talking about how people kill themselves. And it just seems to me when I read the report, and I know what's not in there. You've mentioned a couple of things about what's not in there, but it's like we're throwing pills at the symptoms instead of actually reaching in, getting into these minds, getting into their lives, and sorting through and go through a root cause analysis in order to find something that can help them get to a solution that's not going into a room and killing yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately, an unpopular opinion, and I'm probably not going to make any friends on when I say this, but, it's more of the same of, the American medical system treating symptoms rather than the root cause, right? And, that's what we found layered within the, suicide report is means reduction and, rather than root cause analysis. We don't want to take the hard look at what's causing these circumstances, right? And Nick Palmisano, great friend and a really, really awesome individual that is, been in the veteran community for a long time. So he's seen this as much as we have. When he says that, the combat experience is that much, it's minuscule in the grand scheme of things when it comes to PTSD and all the other symptoms, right? Because what we're not recognizing is that the veteran, most likely coming from broken home America, is bringing luggage with them into the military. And then when all of these things, these stressors, and pressured environments collapse upon the individual, and those safety environments are broken when they leave service, all that erupts and, comes to the surface for that veteran. And 9 times out of 10, we see a lot of pain and suffering, right? And then we've also understood that, there's, this correlation between inflammation and pain, right? And then going from, managing that pain straight into addiction, which often leads to suicidal ideations and death, right? So we've got a couple things that are really affecting the veteran. But, the thing that the VHA thought was more important in their 2024 National Suicide Report was putting in there that 73 is important that we lock up our guns. 73% of veterans need the lock. It's the highest form of killing themselves. No, it's not. Listen, the gun is the means, right? What is killing us is the problem of our own mental health and the lack of ability to sustainably address it with things that aren't going to make it worse, like Paxil, Zoloft, all of the medicines, and again, like there are. I got to be very careful when I frame this up too, because I don't want to be reckless, right? I'm not saying that these medicines don't have impact on individuals that need it, but the way the strategy in which it's being deployed within the current system and the people that are receiving the benefits of these medicines, they're often being overprescribed and not being monitored while on these medicines, which often lead them to crazy outcomes. Case in point, right? I have a dear friend, a corporal in the Marine Corps, multimillionaire, had several businesses in the city of Chicago, really well off, children, family, whole 9 yards, goes to the VA for smoking cessation because they market that. And then, they let if you want to quit smoking, come to the VA. We got a program for you. And they get him on Wellbutrin. Right. And he was dead, not too far after that, because he shot himself in front of his family with a shotgun. Like, that is ridiculous. And, there's two other families that we came across within the last month that the same exact experience happened to them with Wellbutrin. So, when we are looking at these profiles, these risk profiles that these medicines carry, and we're not having those conversations with the patient, that's criminal, right? So, I can sit here and cast stones at the VA all day, and listen, there's some really great people in the VA, and there's some great VAs in around the country, but there's also bad people in the VA, and there's also bad VAs in this country, and we need to clean these up. We need to root out the people that are not doing their jobs. We need to clean up all the money that's being spread around like we're drunken sailors in port. And figure out what is actually working. There's over 40,000 veteran service organizations in this country. 40,000 of them. You would think that we would have solved veteran suicide 10 years ago. But here we are, over 156,000 of us that we can put our finger on, right? Because, the other devil in the details is there's only about 12 states in the country that are reporting suicides that we're taking these numbers from. The vast majority of the country don't report these suicides. So the number could be, and is thought to be, somewhere in the realms of 60 to 80 a day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of my guests on from a few weeks ago. I'm trying to do one show a month minimum on this issue. Thinks that it's around 45 or 50 himself. That's what he was talking about. And there's a segment in the podcast that I'm pointing people to that you guys did that talks about the data and what's probably missing, what happens at the local coroner level, et cetera, and those kind of things. Because there's a lot of not all veterans are in the VHA system. But I gotta ask you this, Tim. You guys had a discussion a couple of times during the show that talked about, and I hope I got this wrong. Because I said it, I'm a VA patient. I'm very satisfied with 99% of the care that I get, and I've been on SSRIs before. I took myself off of them because I thought they kept me on it too long and they didn't ask me for updates. So you touched on those points, but is it true that I gathered this information correctly from the report and from your broadcast that says if you're a patient in the VHA system, the Veterans Health Agency system, your suicide risk is higher than if you're not?
Yeah.
Is that
because it's mind blowing, isn't it? That they would actually put that information forward, right? And without all the other data that they need to tell their story. Because that completely opens the flank for people like me that are just going to get loud and be like, what? And point exactly to that. Like, you guys are wrong. What are you doing? What are we doing to solve this situation? Why is that the case? Right. And they say that on one hand. And then on the other hand, they're saying when veterans are together, they heal together better. Like, stop blowing smoke on my butt. This is ridiculous. Like, what is it? You can't talk outside both sides of your mouth here.
Yeah. Well, I think it gets back to what the clip I showed of Nick talking about the root causes versus going after the means and the gun thing. I have a problem with going after everybody's guns myself. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. That is not the issue. The issue is the root causes. And that little saying that they have veterans are better together and all that stuff. If they were treating the issues of the root causes from that perspective, I think that we'd be making some headway on this and probably on our way to winning the battle.
I think so. But then, I take that big step back, Rob, I look, I look at things that are working. HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. VA doesn't want to touch it, right? They don't even want to get near it. Right. And it blows my mind. North Carolina just came out with their 3-year study, and this is mind blowing stuff. Right. 3-year study, 144 individuals went through the program. And, here's what they figured out. And we've been talking about this for quite some time. They figured out that inflammation causes pain causes addiction. Addiction causes death or suicide. Hey, mind blowing. Wow. God, how many millions of dollars did we spend to figure that one out, guys? But most importantly, here's what we did figure out is that if you follow that line, right, and you start treating some of these pains and inflammations with hyperbaric, pressurized oxygen, ATA of 1.5 or higher, you are starting to reduce inflammation, which reduces pain, which reduces the patient's desire for pain medications to mask the pain, which leads to addiction, right? So all of that, they figured out that, hyperbaric chambers for, soft tissue regeneration, neuroplasticity, and things of that nature, 57% reduction in suicide ideation. But the VA doesn't want to deal with that. They don't want to touch it. Right? No, talk therapy. We want to talk it out a little bit more with you guys because that's working.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, I got to take another break, but I want to talk some more about HBOT because I've been working in that area too for many, many years. And I'll tell you about a doctor that I met. But I've met an Army TBI PTSD combination officer that was completely turned around by HBOT, and the VA will not support this treatment to counter suicide and counter mental health issues and those kind of things. We'll be right back with Tim Jensen of the Grunstyle Foundation, and we're talking about winning the war against veteran suicide and ending this. That's what's got to be done. We'll be right back.
I want to say something about like our suicide prevention efforts also. When we teach veterans, if you go report suicidal thoughts or behaviors to your medical provider, you're going to lose your rights, you're going to lose your gun rights, we're going to put you in a psych ward and give you meds. That is actually coercive and punitive. So like the veteran learns, stop telling these people that you're suicidal. And the medications have side effects for suicide, especially for young men. It's like it's staring you right in the face. So the question I have to ask after reading both reports, the whole thing, was there's been a rise in suicide. We have not done a good job. So you have to look at the prevention efforts, and all the money VA is spending is not working. It's not. Okay, that's it, bottom line.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. And my guest today is Tim Jensen, the chairman of Grunstyle Foundation. And they're on a path to help the VA understand what needs to be done. And we all are joining them, quite frankly. I will go anywhere. Secretary Collins or any of the people that work for him, I will pay for my own way to come talk to you, to bring people to you that know what's going on. And Tim, we were talking about hyperbaric oxygen therapy before. 9 years ago, I met Dr. Paul Harsh from New Orleans, who has been working HBOT therapy, and he treated a West Point Army professor that had gone into combat, got a TBI, had PTSD, couldn't teach anymore. I think this gentleman was out of Iowa, and he brought him down to New Orleans. That's how I met him. I lived north of Lake Pontchartrain in those days instead of on the beach in Mississippi. And Dr. Harsh treated him, went through a course of treatment with him, I think 11 weeks or so, and it completely turned him around. He could teach again at West Point. And the pain subsided. The amazing thing, and you mentioned it kind of briefly before we went to the break, is that he showed us the charts of the neural network of his brain before and after. And the material, actually, the human body actually started generating new neural pathways in his brain. And I think that's what does it for you. And Dr. Harsh, Went to the VA. The VA wouldn't listen for years and years and years. I don't think they still approve paying for HBOT therapy for PTSD and especially TBI and PTSD combination. It worked very effectively. I met this guy, and it was amazing seeing the videos of him beforehand and then talking to him afterward.
Yeah, it's the only way I could put it, that makes sense to me, it's magic. It really is. There is certainly science behind it, and that speaks to all of the positive things that come from it. The thing that's disappointing is that we're 60 years behind on this modality of treatment, right? It has been pushed away into the closet for quite some time. It wasn't until the sports medicine was getting desperate and trying to figure out CTEs that it started making a reemergence back into the medical field. I mean, it wasn't I remember as a kid when Michael Jackson, you talk about Michael Jackson and hyperbaric chambers, it was like make fun of it, but not really having an understanding of what it was. Here we are today, and it's saving people's lives. It's rebuilding great brain matter. It is, saving lives of people with diabetic foot ulcers, right? But within the VA, they don't want to have anything to do with it. Dr. Robert Beckman, a member, a very esteemed individual that has been working with the within HBOTs for nearly 3 decades. Has shared some really interesting information with us. He's an advisor on the Grunstyle Foundation for our HBOT program, and he shared with us that nearly 1 million patients inside the VA have died because of inaccess to hyperbaric chambers for diabetic foot ulcers. So think about that. Nearly 1 million veterans have died in the VHA because of not having access to hyperbaric chambers and therapies that would have saved their life. Saved their life, period.
Yeah.
Right? This is criminal.
That's
like,
tragic.
I don't understand it. Right? So what we've been doing from the Grunstyle Foundation and understanding the power of this stuff is, we empower the veteran for their own ability to take their healthcare into their own control. So we have partnered with a company that delivers these hyperbaric chambers to your home. And we are providing collapsible 1.3 to 1.5 ATA home units with condensers, oxygen condensers, everything you need to do all the dives that is required to get you back into a homeostasis that your body is reading perfectly, right? And generally what we see is it takes about 60 to 80 dives in these units in the privacy of your own home to get there. And the benefit of that is if you were to go out into the public to do this, it costs anywhere between $150 to $400 a session, right? And it takes generally about 40 to 60 dives to see results of this style of therapy. And it's not often covered by insurance. So that's why this stuff is just like out of reach for so many people, and it has the ability to cure so many people, and it's just maddening to me.
Oh yeah, here's a little tidbit for you. I found out that I go to the Biloxi VA facility. They actually have an HBOT capability there, but they won't use it for TBI. They won't use it for TBI or PTSD. So that put that in your pipe and smoke it. And it can't be about the money, man. I mean, look, we're spending $13 billion on it. So, I mean, somebody thinks veterans and their families are worth it. That is a lot of money. It's like this Doge thing. It's a matter of how is the money being spent. And that's why when I saw that you put your press release out and you guys are calling for Secretary Collins to do an investigation on this expenditure, that's exactly what needs to happen. Because think about it. If I could put an HBOT device in every veteran's home that needs it, if you guys can do it, certainly we have the money to do that right here. Why can't we do that? No more excuses. That's kind of where I'm at on this is no more excuses because, and here's why we're talking about this, folks. If you you can go get this report, you can pull it down. If you're a data person at all, you can understand some of the big picture stuff in here. Since 2001 to 2022, male veterans Suicide risk increased 65%. 65% increase for veteran males, if I read it correctly. You know that the other number that jumped out at me for males was veteran males at 34.7% rate, non-veteran males 17.1% rate. I think it was in 2022, if I remember. There's a lot of numbers and a lot of graphs in this stupid report. I shouldn't say stupid report. Look, this is worth. It needs to be better, but it's useful in its own way for what it doesn't have in it and what it does have in it. And that, think about that: 34.7% versus 17.1% for males. That's more than double the rate for veterans. That's why we've been talking about this for years and years and years and years now. I think the first issue I ever talked about in a veterans group was 22 a day within less than 6 months of retiring after 32 and a half years in the service. You know, the last thing that I did, Tim, one of the last things I did in command, I was a wing commander, kind of like a regimental level commander and a base commander, was have to talk to the mom of a young guy that committed suicide. And I wanted to just bring this out real quick and say what Nick was saying about the non-combat piece to this is true. The first question I asked was, this young man ever deployed to combat? And he wasn't. He was actually about to be forced out, and he had come from this broken home environment that we were talking about. And one of the things that triggered him to do it, and he didn't use a gun either, was having to go back to civilian society into that environment when he had had a taste of what the Air Force could do for him. So
it's
that data is correct.
Absolutely. It's the people that join the military, largely fall into one big bucket, right? And and I hate to like quantify it this easily, but most of the people that join the military are experience something that they saw or it happened to them, and they don't ever want to see it happen to somebody else. So they say, I'm going to stand up and be a force of good. Right. And they join the military for that very reason. And then when that mission is over and they return to the civilian world, there's nothing, there's no mission of goodness left out here other than, maybe some 501c work that, if you're really passionate, but ain't going to keep the lights on because you need a real job to live in this society. Like all that goes away. And then you fall into the granulars of trying to survive day to day, and then you fall into an addiction, and then the next thing you know, it's like it's not worth it anymore because I have no mission, I have no purpose, and I'm 32 years old, right? And nothing seems like it was when I was 26 years old around my bros, or all the people that relied on me, because those factors aren't there any longer. Then I look at like just the spend, I take all that and then I look at all the spending that's going into it, right? And I look at like certain line items, $40 million for, homelessness. Rob, if you gave me $40 million right now, I would solve this country's homelessness tomorrow.
Yeah.
Period. Like for the veterans, we've done, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, what are we talking about?
Exactly.
This is every year they give this money out and nothing's changing. Like, what do we? So, like, we all this money is going towards great things, right? The what they say, the road the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And we are on the road to hell, and we watched thousands, hundreds of thousands take their life from suicide. We've seen tens, if not hundreds of thousands, die from burn pits, along those way, Agent Orange and all the other things that our government is exposed to, right? And so this path for the veteran just ends in death, regardless of where the path is taking us. So it's either we take control of it now and we say we're no longer going to deal with this, and we're going to stand up for our individual proxy and agency and say we demand better. Or we can continue doing this, and when our sons and daughters get conscripted into the military because nobody wants to join any longer because the health of the nation is piss poor, because if we go back to the time of George Washington, he firmly said you can judge the health of a nation by the way it treats its veterans. Well, if the path keeps going the way that we're going now, we won't have a veteran class any longer because nobody wants to join it because for what? To see your life, ground out into dust or be addicted to something or die of cancer or exotic cancers or going off and doing the things you're asked to do. Like nobody's going to want to do that any longer. And you could talk to the youngest group of Americans today, outside of this bump in, patriotism that's happening, respectively, before that, nobody wanted to join the military, and it was reflective in the recruiting numbers.
Yeah, and I appreciate the bump we're getting to of patriotism that's coming out, but soon the path will settle back down to what you're talking about, Tim. We got to take our last break. When we come back, we'll talk some more about this. I want to talk about where the money is going and how we can make recommendations to Secretary Collins about this issue, because we can spend billions on our veterans, but we still can't say we're taking care of them because we're not winning on this issue. It's getting worse every single time I look at it. We'll be right back with Tim Jensen of Grunt Style Foundation.
So it depends on how you talk about the amount of money that goes to suicide prevention, right? Because structurally the VA, the Office of Suicide Prevention is housed in the VHA in the Office of Mental Health, right? So institutionally, they look at this problem as a mental health problem, which is why evidence-based therapy is their traditional modalities to solve the problem, right? Less than 50% of veterans are enrolled in VHA healthcare, maybe right around 50%. Even less use the VA on a recurring basis, right? And there are probably a bunch of different reasons veterans don't use VA. They may have private health insurance, TRICARE, any different distrust of the VA may be a factor. But like, what are you doing if you want to be holistic about your approach to this, you have to have effective outreach to veterans, right? And the VA's budget for suicide prevention outreach specifically is roughly, I think, $570 million per year, which is less than 1/10 of 1% of their entire budget. And most of that outreach goes to the Veteran Crisis Line. Some of it goes to a program called under the Commander John Scott Hannon Act. There was a Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox grant program that provides up to $750,000 a year for local organizations doing suicide prevention, which I think is a good approach because you have local organizations on the ground that are not, veterans won't necessarily directly associate them with VA, but they're doing the work. They have the trust of local veterans, which is also in line with the VA over the years, getting closer and closer to the community outside of medical centers, CBOCs, vet centers, that sort of stuff. I've never met a veteran that said, "Oh, I saw a Choose VA advertisement at a hockey game," or something like that, and that's what made me decide to go use VA or call the Veteran Crisis Line or something like that.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Transition Tuesday, and we are seeing the VA leadership is changing before our very eyes. But we've got this report from 2024 that is talking about, once again, the rise in veteran suicide. We have not made a dent in the rates. We have not made a dent in anything when it comes to this, other than we keep giving drugs, and the approach we're taking is not being effective. And my guest today is Tim Jensen. He's the president and chairman of the board of the Grunstall Foundation, and they are working this issue hard. Yeah. And let me go over to our space audience and you guys mute your mics, please. We're getting some feedback from the live audience right now. So what's happening is all this money's being spent to very little positive effect in making a dent in these numbers, Tim. That was Cole Isle of the American Legion in the clip there from you guys' show, Gaslighting the American Veteran, talking about this report. The interesting thing that he said was at the very end that caught my attention why I used the clip. I've never heard a veteran say, I saw this TV ad, and this is why I called the Veterans Crisis Line, or I chose to go to the Veterans Healthcare system. And he's right. He's right. I have never met a veteran, and we're probably spending $500 million a year on things like TV ads when it comes to that. And it just struck me, and I'm like, and you mentioned something in the last segment, and I think the number is about $347 million going to veteran non-government organizations total in the budget, which is not a huge amount, but it's a large amount when you're talking $750,000 for a little NGO that's a local NGO. But who's monitoring that stuff? Are we auditing this to make sure that they're putting those dollars to the right place according to their mission? What are we doing here? Because the outcome is not. Obviously, it's not where it needs to be. And we've got to get this zeroed out. We've really got to get this zeroed out. At a minimum, get the numbers and the rates to equivalent of the civilian population. That's a good initial goal, but I think we should be able to zero it out because veterans they're phenomenal people. As you said, most people come out and they do well, and they adapt well. But we have this cohort that isn't able to do that or finds themselves in a place where they can no longer do.
Yeah.
So how do we approach this money? How do we approach the spending piece to Secretary Collins?
You got at some point we got to look at like you can look at how you spend your money in your household, or you can look at how you spend money in a business, right? There's money coming in and there's money going out, right? So here's what we know is that they get funded with a $1 billion budget, right? And then they start allocating those budgets to where they want to spend it. They've got 9.1 million people inside the healthcare system that they have to facilitate, and inside that, they have 450,000 employees. So that do the math. That's one for every 21 individuals, right? So that's a lot of people. It's the biggest employer on the planet, right? And we cannot, like, if I was in charge of 20 people, right, and it was, hey Tim, here's $20 million. You're in charge of 20 people. Just don't let them kill themselves. With $20 million, right. I think I could make that happen. Now I'm making a joke, and I'm certainly making jest of the situation. But listen, like when you're $570 million, right, and we have a veteran crisis line that nobody knows the phone number to, we are failing, right? I run a business. Yeah. I'm a $130 million business. I have a substantial marketing dollar that I put out every year, and it's in the excess of tens of millions of dollars. I communicate better to my audience than the VA is on this particular issue. And I'm doing it with less money, more effectively than they are. So where is the $570 million going? So there's a little breakout, and you heard a little bit of it from the BSO that was sharing, Lyle. Community-based programs, $50 million going to community-based programs. Okay, cool. What are they? What's the impact? What are they doing? Are they making substantial change? What are their KPIs? Fox Grant eats up a lot of money, right? To the tune that one organization can earn up to $750,000, right?
Yeah.
What I have seen is these wonderful little equestrian farms that have popped up all over the nation, right? That are not servicing as many veterans as they think that they should be. Is that where our money's going? I think equestrian therapy is great, but are these programs filled? Right? Are they actually? What are they doing? Like, how are they being reported back? Right? We got the Mission Daybreak Initiative. Who the hell even knows what the hell that is? I don't. And I'm like, what's going on?
I've never heard of it.
Right?
I've never heard
Exactly.
of it.
And it's taking substantial dollars. And then finally, the Veterans Crisis Line, like that is taking the bulk, the share, the majority of that, right? And then we get these these kind of lame ass people going out there saying, oh, they fired 1,000 people. Hey, 1,000 people in a 450,000 matrix employment structure. That's not going. You're not. It's not going to cause any impact. It's not. You won't even hear that. It's like a fart in a wind tunnel, man. Like, what are we talking about here?
No impact at all.
So like, why don't we, instead of continuing down the road of insanity and continuing to spread money into the same programs that are failing year after year after year after year, let's try something novel. Let's try something so profoundly different that it could actually work. Like the HBOT. I don't know. Psychedelics, giving people access to mushrooms. Because you know what I know about mushrooms and psychedelics is that the well over 100 people that I've personally put through these things, they've all been cured, and they've done it one time. They don't have to be on psychotropics and SSRIs and all the other nonsense trash that's poisoning their bodies, and they are able to reconnect with their inner selves and have beautiful relationships with their loved ones again. Things that they haven't been able to do in probably 20, 30 years. So it's like, let's do something different. We have to do something different for the sake of our country, for the sake of our brethren, and for the sake of the warfighter. That that we know that we're still going to attract the best and brightest, most lethal freaking killers on the planet to go fight our nation's battles. That's what we need. And if we don't have that, then we lose, and we'll have more problems than we have to figure out later.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, a big part of the recruiting problem is the backside and what's happening here and what we're talking about. Well, we got time for one question from the audience. I do have a hand up over there before we get to the end of the show. This time, I knew this time would go too fast. I'm going to have to get you back maybe next month. We'll do another show. But go ahead, Rob. You're hosting over there. Who's got their hand up? And ask a question real quick.
Thanks, Colonel. We have Cookie. Cookie, go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon. Is there any mechanisms that are built in within the VA that they try non-controlled substance therapies, things like that? Is there a way that they even do this or to introduce it? And also, when the veterans are getting prescribed this stuff, are the doctors telling them these things will occur and what will happen or what they should do if these things occur when they're on the meds?
Good question.
Cookie, fantastic question. And that, it gets me into this part of the response of our solutions, right? I can sit here again, and I mentioned I can bitch and complain about the VA as long as the day is long, is the sun is on, but that's not going to produce anything for anybody, right? So some solutions that I think that we can go after is one, to your point, informed consent. What is not happening right now is doctors having a conversation with their patients saying, hey, we need to put you on Paxil, but you're also taking a statin. Here's how that Paxil and that statin can interact, and there might cause an increase in suicidal ideations. And these are things that we need to prepare you for and walk and talk through and get you aware of. Those aren't happening. Very easy. We can change that today, right? The second thing that we want to implement is the Maudsley's prescribing methods and guidelines, right? Right now, there's no prescribing guideline that is being followed with these medicines in the programming. So people can stop today on their medicine and have to go through all of the the wickedness that follows with that, because there is, a downturn that the individuals go through weaning off of this medicine, right? So we want a proper prescribing guideline followed, and then we want publicly to release all the collected data on the suicides that are being held within the organization that we know exist, we know that are being collected and just not being shared. So those are the three solutions that we have. Now, in terms of your question about access on some of these alternative modalities, you have to jump through hoops to get the HBOT, right? You really do, but it is accessible. Like ketamine, there are places, VAs across the country that are administering ketamine. It is another difficult path to take, but they are there, right? And I recommend either one of those as alternative modalities that are different than the status quo of what we're seeing today and are providing positive outcomes for the veteran.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. Folks, you can find Tim on X at GruntStyle1SG. We appreciate you, brother. Keep up the fight. Anything I can help with, all you got to do is call me. You got my number and everything. And folks, please go donate to Grunt Style Foundation. This is extremely important work. They're doing it. They're getting the HBOT devices into homes of veterans. So we appreciate you. We'll get you back next month and do another show on this because there's a lot of info in this report we need to talk through and get people aware of it. But also, I want to hear from the Secretary of Veterans Affairs immediately. We got to get this done, man. We got to get it done. I'll see you tomorrow, folks, at same time. It's Wednesday. We got a special guest, Neil McCabe, our Washington, D.C. reporter, and he's got some breaking news to talk about a new program that Worldview Tube is going to be airing. And the first half of the show is going to be open mic tomorrow on Whistleblower Wednesday. We got a lot to talk about. I'm Rob Maness from Worldview Tube.